Morning, everybody. We are 15 minutes late, so we will have to catch up during the morning in order to be able of start our mass at noon, exactly at noon. So we will have to rush the program in this morning. It is with great satisfaction to inaugurate our Business as a Noble Vocation Award. This is the first year that we are delivering that award. The vision of the future of Uniapac, as we have been discussing in these 3 days, is we aspire to be recognized worldwide by our distinct promotion of business as a noble vocation. So this award is fully consistent with our aspiration and our vision of the future. The purpose of the award is to identify business leaders who in their business activities are exhibiting good practices that are fully consistent with the concept of business as a noble award. Basically, we have 3 different categories for identifying business leaders that are good models in each of these 3 categories. The first one is the personal transformation of the business leader. What we aspire is to identify people who have really seen themselves challenged by a greater meaning in life. The second level is more humane organizational cultures. So we are trying to identify business leaders who have been able or are striving to build more humane corporate cultures in their own enterprises. And finally, the third category is to identify business leaders who are leading businesses which are oriented to the common good. So those are the 3 categories. The way the winners of this award were selected is as follows. In each national member association, they define autonomously the way they will use to identify their candidates in these 3 categories. They had the opportunity of presenting 1 candidate per category, so a maximum of 3 candidates. All these candidacies were submitted to each regional office with 1-page description of the reasons behind the selection process. So explaining why this candidate deserves to be considered for the nomination of this award. Each region then, amongst all the candidates that were submitted, selected the regional winner. The regional winners have been invited to participate with travel and lodging expenses covered in this Congress, and they are present in this meeting room. So you will know them in a minute. For each of these regional winners, a 4 to 5 page document expanding on the business case that supports that candidacy have been requested. So we will have 4 documents of 4 to 5 pages each. Then, with that document, the International Board of Uniapac selected the worldwide winner. And the worldwide winner has been requested to prepare a presentation, and we will have the worldwide winner presenting today his case in front of this distinguished audience. So that's how the process was implemented, and that's the way we will continue implementing this award every year from now onwards. So this is the inauguration of this process. What is important, and perhaps is our reward of this award, is the document that we can put together. Let's assume that we have in the future 3 candidates per each national association. We have more than 40 associations. So we will have 120 one-page summaries of business practices that are good examples of what we mean by business as a noble vocation. That will be added with the 4 to 5 pages describing specific cases that are being selected, and the complete presentation of the worldwide winner. So each year, if this goes that way, we will have a book of about 150 pages that will serve to everybody to understand with practical examples what we are pursuing. How can a business leader transform business into a noble vocation? So that's our reward for this effort. I will request Rodrigo Whitelaw, the General Secretary of Uniapac, to come to the stage to present the winners of this first edition of the award. Rodrigo.
Thank you, Rolando. So on behalf of Uniapac, I would like to thank you, all the candidates from the Uniapac associations around the world that participate in the Business as a Noble Vocation Award. So the first, I would like to present the 3 finalists. So el primer finalista es el señor Nathan Chabot de México. Si puede venir, por favor. For each finalist, I would like to present in 3 minutes your experience, yourself and your experience, and I will.
Muy buenos días. El propósito es la intención o el ánimo de hacer algo. Es la acción deliberada para lograr algo. Cuando el propósito es no solo para el bien propio, sino también para el bien de los otros, cuando el propósito es el reconocimiento y la conciencia de que podemos ser parte de algo más grande que nosotros mismos. Cuando el propósito nos trasciende, nos embarga una enorme alegría. Me parece fascinante y admiro a la gente que tiene el coraje y la creatividad de concebir proyectos que impactan positivamente a la sociedad, que abren las oportunidades de quienes no las han tenido, que construyen un entorno más amable, de paz y armonía. Me conmueve ser parte de este evento que busca el bien común y la dignidad humana. Agradezco enormemente el reconocimiento que se me está dando, pues me motiva y me inspira a reduplicar mis esfuerzos. Soy un idealista y un optimista que cree en la posibilidad de crear un mundo mejor. Desde que inicié mi carrera profesional, las ideas de bien común, sentido de propósito, retos, innovación, felicidad, pasión, responsabilidad, principios y valores y otras muchas han sido para mí motivo de continua reflexión. Me han impulsado a realizar proyectos de muy distintas índoles, desde crear una escuela de plomeros y electricistas dentro de la empresa que dirijo, o dar oportunidad y una plataforma al personal destacado para fundar su propia microempresa, hasta contribuir con la inclusión laboral y apoyo a personas con discapacidad, migrantes que regresan de Estados Unidos, o también participar en la reforestación y limpieza de bosques. Después de impulsar varios proyectos de responsabilidad social, he llegado a la conclusión de que todos ellos convergen en un concepto: el cuestionamiento ético. De ahí, y como resultado de observar esta convergencia, mi interés se volcó no solamente a ofrecer algo que contribuya al bienestar de los demás, sino también contagiar, educar y motivar a los demás a hacer lo mismo. Entonces tuve la iniciativa de crear Humané, Trazando Ética, proyecto que tiene como misión contribuir al desarrollo de una conciencia ética a través del arte y la sensibilización, que motive la reflexión en torno a los valores y principios, que impacte en la conducta humana e invite a hacer el bien. Humané tiene como objetivo desarrollar experiencias éticas que promuevan valores universales para instituciones educativas y empresa. Un proyecto que integra la ética, el arte, la innovación, la tecnología, la responsabilidad social y la viabilidad financiera. Muchos de nosotros conocemos las habilidades educativas que se agrupan bajo el acrónimo STEAM: Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, Mathematics. La ética y los valores son, en la práctica, competencias fundamentales. Por eso, estoy convencido de que hay que agregarle a STEAM la letra que le falta, la E de ética. Muchas gracias.
Ábrelo. Felicitaciones. Maintenant, je voudrais appeler les représentants de l'Italie et de l'organisation Italie Uscid, M. Agustin Mujaragamba.
Bonjour, moi je suis Augustin Mujaragamba, je viens de l'Italie comme il vient de dire. Le consortium ISEC, c'est une organisation sans but lucratif. Elle a été conçue et développée par l'Union chrétienne entrepreneurs dirigeants de Milan, la section de Milan. Le consortium réunit les entreprises locales qui généralement sont plutôt moyennes en termes de grandeur, et les entreprises des immigrés qui sont plutôt petites, voire même, disons, les artisans. Et le rôle du consortium, c'est de faciliter la collaboration entre les deux entités. Et donc, nous pensons que cette réunion contribue à l'intégration des immigrés et donc à la cohésion sociale et donc à la solidarité. C'est tout. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Hein. Donc, le troisième finaliste, c'est M. Aimé Séné du Sénégal. Et je pense qu'il n'est pas ici. Donc, au niveau de l'Afrique, il va venir Vincent. Ah, vous êtes là. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup. Merci
De rien.
Merci. je vous remercie. Ce prix, c'est pour l'Afrique. C'est vrai, de temps en temps, on voit une Afrique fatiguée, une Afrique avec des misères. Mais il faut aussi voir une Afrique avec de l'espoir, une Afrique avec de l'amour, une Afrique avec des gens qui croient, une Afrique avec des jeunes entrepreneurs, de plus jeunes, de moins jeunes, qui essayent de bâtir, d'offrir de l'emploi pour que les gens restent en Afrique. Et moi, je crois en Afrique. J'ai étudié en Afrique, au Sénégal précisément. J'ai créé mes affaires en Afrique. C'est après que mes affaires soient florissantes que j'ai parcouru le monde. Je suis fier de l'Afrique. À ce moment bien précis, je pense à mon épouse, Marie-Ange, qui m'a accompagné dans mes entreprises, dont certains connaissent ici, et qui est décédée. Une brave femme. Je pense à mes collaborateurs, je ne dirais pas employés. Moi, j'ai eu un employé, un Européen, je ne dirais pas la nationalité. Il me regardait dans les yeux et me disait, c'est mon employé. J'avais l'impression que je lui appartenais. C'est pour ça que je n'aime pas utiliser le mot employé. J'ai des collaborateurs. Et enfin, je veux simplement dire que le Christ est dans les entreprises. Moi, chaque matin que je me lève, je suis heureux. Je suis heureux parce que je sais que dans la journée, je vais accomplir des choses. Je vais rencontrer le Christ qui est mon collaborateur, qui est mon fournisseur, qui est mon ami. Et j'essaie de lui transmettre les forces positives. Voilà un peu ce que c'est que ma vie. Et croyez en l'Afrique, parce qu'il y a beaucoup à faire. Et notre cher président est venu nous visiter en Afrique. Je le remercie. Il a parcouru des kilomètres et des kilomètres et il a vu l'Afrique. Merci beaucoup, président.
And now the worldwide winner of the Uniapac Business as a Noble Vocation Award is Ramon del Rosario from Philippines.
Your name is engraved there. So thank you. Thank you.
Philippine Ambassador Celia Ana Feria, Mr. Rolando Medeiros, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Maraming salamat. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. There are events in our lives that we celebrate openly and without hesitation, because perhaps the achievement is self-evident. On August 2nd this year, my wife and I celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. And of course, we celebrated all the way through September, and we have not stopped celebrating. First, we celebrated my wife's infinite patience and tolerance for putting up with me these past 50 years in mostly happy circumstances. Most importantly, we celebrated the good Lord's gifts of 4 lovely daughters, now grown into full-fledged mothers, who with their spouses have brought us 9 lovable grandchildren. As a Christian gentleman and father, I have always considered my family as my most treasured gift and my proudest achievement. Today you honor me for the work that I do. And while I am proud of my work, I never expected global recognition or acclaim. Indeed, I am absolutely humbled by your recognition, for my work involves no extraordinary hardship or sacrifice. I aim to do nothing heroic, only what is right. And I, in fact, thoroughly enjoy what I do. American novelist, preacher, and theologian Carl Frederick Buechner wrote, and I quote, "The place that God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." I believe our ultimate role as leaders, or even just as members of the human race, is to make the world better, as it has so many deep hungers. This is how I have chosen to live my life, to make lives better through my company, FINMA, and my other responsibilities, and it has been my deep gladness to serve. Let me begin with my company, Philippine Investment Management, Inc., or FINMA, which you heard a little bit about yesterday. In his address to a joint session of the United States Congress, Pope Francis said, and I quote, "Business is a noble vocation directed to producing wealth and improving the world," end of quote. FINMA, beyond creating jobs and paying decent wages, fulfills this mission by choosing businesses that directly impact the lives of the poor through the provision of goods and services that meet their needs at an affordable cost. This is most important in our country, where dehumanizing poverty continues to be a reality for millions. This is best exemplified by our entry into education. This has been about serving the marginal in society, the children of farmers, policemen, public school teachers, and other government workers, of pedicab drivers, street vendors, and manual laborers. These are the families that need the best opportunities to improve their lives. Our intent is to give them accessible, quality education through a countrywide network of institutions. 75% of our 70,000 students come from households that earn no more than $300 per month. 25% come from the lowest income class and are below the country's official poverty threshold. This is the market that FINMA Education has chosen to serve. To serve these most vulnerable, we brought our management systems and practices and our decades of experience and expertise to bear on what was so fundamental a need, education. We reduced education to its most essential elements: appropriate facilities and learning material, a proper classroom, and a great teacher. We do not take shortcuts nor sacrifice quality. We spend heavily on faculty development, run our own in-house training programs, and give full graduate education scholarships. We do not spend heavily on administration, choosing to use the same people and systems across our network, nor on academic research, but instead focus on teaching expertise. Finally, expenses for non-academic student activities, such as sports and extracurricular activities, are done on a highly selective basis. As a result, our tuition and fees remain affordable, averaging only $250 to $300 per semester. Significantly, 65% of our college freshmen are first-generation college students. We are thus giving Filipino families a chance to graduate for the first time a child from college. But to help this market, it could not be only about low fees. While the lack of financial resources is often the major obstacle to a good education, a weak academic background, the lack of preparedness, a simple inability to read, also exclude the youth from educational opportunities. Exclusion comes in many forms. FINMA Education's freshmen enter with grade 4 reading and math competencies. Based on assessment examinations, only 3% are ready for college. But to turn away the 97% would be to condemn them to lives of permanent poverty. If we were to address their poverty, our education has to be about extreme effectiveness. Our key intervention is a program called the Student Success Program, or SSP, which is based on the experiences of Teach for America, University of Texas, Austin, and other organizations whose work is relevant to low-income, first-generation students. The SSP seeks to provide our students with mindsets and tools for success in school and life in general, going beyond academics and addressing the causes of shortcomings. The goal for them is to internalize 3 key messages: I want, I can, and I belong. As a result of this program and the commitment to academic excellence, our professionalizing examination success rates have gone from an average of 50 to 75% from 2009 to 2017. In that same period, our average annual tuition fees actually decreased from $600 to $500, while teacher salaries rose 37%. Moreover, our students employed 1 year after graduation has remained at a significant 70%. In addition to education, FINMA has other business units that seek to ameliorate the lives of the poor. Through our real estate arm, FINMA Properties, our socialized housing division provides housing to those most in need. One project called Sitio Looban, a former slum community housing 700 informal settlers, garnered recognition in 2014 from the United Nations Development Program. The group was also tapped by a local government to design a master planned community and construct almost 1,100 housing units for informal settlers. Collaborating with Philippine Business for Social Progress and the Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals, FINMA Properties conducted values formation and livelihood and skills training programs for the homeowners. Studies show that these families are now paying less monthly amortization to the government than they were previously paying to the syndicates that were running their communities. Having their own houses likewise provided them with better protection from inclement weather, running water, and better sanitation. But as we pursue our mission of making lives better, it must not only be about results and activity. Process is just as important. The way we do things must in themselves make lives better. For example, businesses all over face the same dilemmas, from the temptation to bribe officials to release permits, to competing in an industry where smuggling is the norm, to walking the tightrope between enhancing shareholder value and keeping tuition fees low, to balancing the company's bottom line with the well-being of employees, tensions over what is right, and business realities. Recognizing precisely this, during my term as chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Philippines' most influential business organization, the Makati Business Club, in 2013, together with other business organizations, we set up the Philippines Integrity Initiative, an effort to promote good governance, transparent business transactions, and implement strict integrity standards among business enterprises. The initiative believes that corruption prevented the operation of a level playing field for business, but more importantly, exacerbated poverty. The program commits corporations to ethical business practices, such as proper financial reporting and prohibiting bribery, and to support the national campaign against corruption. Following the law and rules, paying taxes correctly, avoiding graft and corruption, treating employees fairly and well, protecting the environment, running businesses ethically, and living lives of integrity. The way we do things in themselves have the power to change the world. Last but not least, to make a difference during our lifetime, we must go beyond our worlds, our families, professions, and businesses, and reach out to society at large. Our lives must also be about citizenship, about shaping society itself and influencing a people's development. And as the roots of many of the ills besetting us are found in the very institutions and structures that make up the nation, we must move beyond projects and use our positions to influence the country's macro environment and directions. Realizing this, in 2006, with other CEOs, we founded what we called Philippine Business for Education. Our intent was to advocate policy and reforms needed to make the Philippine education system inclusive and effective. The goal was systemic change. Building classrooms, training teachers, and scholarships were no longer enough to impact the lives of more than 20 million students in the government schools. The entire education system had to change, and business had to participate and, if need be, even lead this change. The shift, for example, from a 10-year to a 12-year basic education cycle, probably the largest transformation in Philippine education system in recent decades, was one of Philippine Business for Education's first and most effective advocacies. Another advocacy close to my heart is arts and culture. So in 2010, I accepted the chairmanship of the National Museum of the Philippines. Since then, the National Museum has transformed into a world-class institution that gives Filipinos added reason to be proud of our rich heritage and culture. Our landmark project was the conversion of a pre-World War II Department of Tourism building into the new National Museum of Natural History. Since its opening in May 2018, the museum has seen record inflows of visitors, with many more visitors than our initial estimates. And this has likewise increased attendance at both the National Museum of Fine Arts and the National Museum of Anthropology. From FINMA Education and Socialized Housing to the Integrity Initiative, Philippine Business for Education, and the National Museum, I have been truly blessed to be given the opportunity to be of service, and that it has indeed been a deep, deep gladness. But there are many more of the world's deep hungers that must be addressed. This is where God continues to call all of us. Before closing, allow me to offer my profuse thanks to Uniapac for deeming me suited for this extraordinary recognition, especially as this is the first ever such award you've given. I thank also the Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals from the Philippines, most especially Joey Avellana and Tito Serafica, for their generosity and faith in pursuing my nomination. I thank also my colleagues in FINMA, particularly Oscar Hilado, Mag Albarracin, Bobby Lavinia, and Chito Salazar and his education team, who have not only embraced our mission of making lives better, but have concretely touched many lives. I thank also the De La Salle brothers in Manila for their efforts over 17 years to transform me into a Christian gentleman. And finally, I thank my wife, Victoria, who is with me this morning, together with our eldest daughter, Nicole, and my family, for standing by me and always supporting even my most far-fetched and sometimes insane passions and dreams. Allow me to end with another Buchner quote, which captures, I think, how I feel about how blessed I have been. And the quotation goes, "Listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery it is. In the boredom and pain of it, no less than in the excitement and gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it, because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace." Thank you once again for this great honor.
Stacy, stay here because we take a photo now. Okay? Stay here. ¿Tú quieres subir con el carro? Natán, puedes subir con el regalo. Now, MSN, si es que... MSN, si vous pouvez monter, s'il vous plaît. The three finalists would like to ask the three finalists to come here to take a final photo. MSN. And please, if Monsignor Robert Vitillo can come as well to bless this ceremony. Yes, indeed, yes, yes, for sure.
May I invite my wife and my daughter to kindly join me on stage? Please.
Regalo. Saquen el regalo. Take the
Mr. Ramon de
regalo.
Rosario, I think, deserves to continue celebrating his 50th anniversary. So well, I think that today we have 4 excellent examples of what is really
Take
transforming
the
business
recado.
into a
Saca el
noble
regalo,
vocation.
Natán.
We have examples of personal transformation, examples of humane business cultures, and we have cases that really demonstrate how
Yes, them
businesses
first and
can
after
really
with
serve
you.
the common good.
will take
I
this
think
after.
that we feel a lot of pride in delivering this award to such distinguished group of business leaders. Thank you for their contribution to the society and to make this world much better. So a big applause to our 4 winners of this year.
Vous pouvez allez-y, venez.
So now we will begin with prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. God, our loving Mother and Father, we ask you to shower down blessings on the award winners this morning and on all of the participants in this Congress. We ask you to send your Spirit upon us. Help us to go deeply into our hearts and our souls and accompany us as we try to spread justice and peace in this world. We know that the work of the entrepreneurs and business are very important, but let us also be very sensitive to the laborers in the field. Each and every day, they make possible the successes of our businesses. Bless us as we go forth after the ending today, and stay with us as we continue to build your kingdom here on this earth. We make this prayer through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you very much. And as you may have seen, the awards are crystal pieces. And for you to find the meaning of the crystal in the awards, please read Ezekiel 1 from 20 to 22. Ezekiel 1, 20 to 22. There you will find the meaning of the crystal in each of these awards. Thank you very much.
Vamos então dar início ao último painel deste congresso. Chamo então ao palco Monsenhor Roberto Vitillo. Monsenhor Roberto Vitillo, please.
Good morning again. And I just want to thank the officers of Uniapac and Rodrigo for their invitation for me to moderate this fifth panel. But before beginning the introduction to the panel, I also was asked to thank all those who came for the Eucharistic adoration this morning at 8 a.m., and also for those who suggested and promoted this. There now have begun several places in the world where the Eucharistic adoration movement among business leaders has started, and we're very, very pleased with that, and we hope that that will continue then on into the future. And also we invite people to continue to put Christ at the center of their lives through this beautiful adoration. The panel that we have this morning is entitled Addressing the Challenges of the Future of Work. And it attempts to imagine the work of the future and to reflect on the new context of labor as an important driver towards social justice. Several times yesterday, and I'm sure the day before as well, we looked at the fact that we need entrepreneurship, but we also need those who feed the work of those entrepreneurs through labor. And we need to make sure that we do this in a way that provides for decent work and decent pay for all those involved in this. Today, our speakers will address different dimensions challenging us in the world of work, including the ecological crisis, social crises, demographic and migration. It says here in the program crisis. I don't agree that we have a migration crisis. I believe we have a migration opportunity because we need migration to continue to have people share their talents, their values, their education, their expertise throughout this world. So I won't use the word crisis that's written in here. And I say that as the Secretary General of the International Catholic Migration Commission, so I realize I'm biased in what I'm saying. And we also will look at the technological changes going on in the world. Several of the speakers that will speak this morning are also connected and participants in a very special initiative that we've started among the Catholic-inspired organizations, many of which have been involved in advocacy at the International Labor Organization. And one of the speakers, Father Pierre Martineau Lagarde, is a staff member of the ILO and really has been the genius behind this special project we have, where we have many different Catholic organizations coming together to look at 6 different tracks related to the future of work and decent work. And we're going to be doing primary research, we're sharing the research done by others, and we're also focusing a great deal on the person who is the laborer. I personally am directing the track on migration and work. And what we're doing there is not only looking for the data and the trends and the tendencies, but we're also doing a special study of the laborers themselves who are migrants and trying to get into their persons and find out what they were searching for and whether they were able to accomplish their search and what are the obstacles that may have interfered with that. And so without a longer introduction, I'd like to then call up the participants in this panel, and they all have very, very interesting experiences and backgrounds to share with us. And so I'd like to call, first of all, Father Pierre Martineau Lagarde, who is working with the International Labor Organization. He's from France, now living in Geneva, Switzerland. And then I'd like to call Ms. Silvia Taurozzi from Iradia Foundation in Argentina. Monsieur Denis Duverne from the AXA Group in France. And Professor Paul Dembinski from the Fondation L'Observatoire de la Finance in Switzerland. I will not go into a long introduction for them. I think probably their bios will be available for you, but let them introduce themselves as they speak with you. And we're going to ask Father Pierre to start out giving us an overview of some of the challenges ahead of us, but also the way Catholic teaching informs and helps us and accompanies us on our way to bring justice to the world of work. Wherever you wish.
You decide, you're the panel.
Here, I think it's fine if it's okay.
Okay, good morning, bonjour, bon dia. It's a pleasure being here. Father Bob has started in English, so may I continue in English or do you prefer French? French? English. Okay. You had 4 questions, 4 crises, and the first answer to the questions that Bob has put forward us is no. I mean, there is not one single crisis. All have to come together. Whether there are crises is another question. I would start by sharing a little bit my reading of Laudato Si. The first time I got this encyclical, I said, oh my goodness, another stuff on ecology. And it sounds weird, but I'm the son of a forest officer, forest administrator. So I should have been familiarized by the idea of ecology from the beginning. And when I read something on ecology, I was like thinking, oh, if we have to go and change our way of life, we have to go back to what was the time of my grandparents. Living in rural areas. I spend wonderful vacations going to the countryside, collecting the vegetables from the gardens. So if this is what ecology means, are we going to have to go back to that? And that was a little bit of my first negative reaction. And sort of, I want to protect myself from that. And I'm saying that because I think it's part of something in our mind, and I think I'm not the only one sharing that. I think we have been through tremendous transformation in Europe over the last century. And the question we are facing is not about going back to our past, to the way of life we were living before Industrial Revolution, before the changes that we have witnessed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It's something of a different transition, but it is a transition in the same ways. So that was the first thing which came to my mind. Let's get out of this negative thing. The second thing which got my attention from Pope Francis was his question mark. I mean, do we always have to equate economic growth with technological innovation? Mm-hmm. Is this a twist? And are we always equating technological innovation and economic growth? Or is there any other form of innovation, social education? We heard wonderful stories just before that, and which would connect much better with innovation and growth than just a single twist relating to only to technology. I'm sorry to say that, I'm a geek, so so we are full of contradiction, and this is probably what we have to do. And from that, that's how we started this project. I think by saying that complexity and saying that we have to be working together and trying to relay this complexity, changes in the environment, changes also linking the social fabrics and those changes. I come from an organization which says there shall not be lasting peace without social justice. So also many situations we're facing, people do not have jobs. If you go into intermediary cities in Africa, many places there is simply no jobs as we think about it. And the absence of jobs and violence are very related, but very often we don't have a global paradigm to say, yes, there is a link there as we have a global paradigm to say, well, we need a climate change. Migration, Bob can tell much more about it than I can. Technological innovation, of course, we have to look at it, and artificial intelligence with the challenges which are there. What I felt also was very important is to look at it into a positive way. What are the changes into entrepreneurship? And where are the places of social innovation that could lead us and give us direction for the changes? So this is the idea of that project, was to link everything together, but not reducing everything to one single equation. You know, very often we say, and we had made that experience already in that project, we said, yes, everything is interconnected, so let's go back to our Christian anthropology and have a holistic version. And meanwhile, we have not addressed the complexity of the problem. Just a little piece of history. I'm a demographer by training, a social historian, and that. So when I think of transition, I think of the huge transition we had over the last, from starting the end of the 19th century up to where we are now, basically. It was an industrial change. It was a change from rural to urban settlement, starting earlier in Britain, but going all the way along in France, for instance, from 1919 to 19... it was a change in health, and where a lot had to do about environment before it started with dealing with medication and so on. I mean, the first improvement in health education, raising the life expectancy about 20 years better, was a change in sanitation and in urban settlement. Much before the antibiotics and all this revolution. We had a change in the family. And the family was a strong support into this transition. We had a change in entrepreneurship. The place entrepreneur, you know, all the story of the 40s model, where labor and communities were places, and urban living were places of co-socialization. This is also gone. So all those changes have been there. We had a change in the way we were creating solidarity, from small NGOs or associations in the Europe settlement to bigger form of solidarity. If you read the social doctrine of the church all along, this is all reflected as a social history and in parallel to that social history. So the change we have before us, I think, is of the same magnitude as the change we had before. So we shouldn't be frightened. We've done through that. But one of the key elements, I think, is how we go about that change and how are we going to make it together. I reread the letter to Cardinal Roy from Paul VI about the thinking about what is the social doctrine of the church. You remember, I mean, the older folks here may remember that better, but in the 70s there was a debate over the social doctrine of the church, whether this was an ideology or not an ideology. It was, and meaning it is fitting between right and left and right, or whether this... and Pope Paul VI responded on that, and as a Jesuit, I love that response, because in XXVI Advenience, he says, this is about discernment. And this is about a discernment which has to be conducted with everybody, and which starts from the local level, has to go to the top. And so this is the question we're struggling with today with that project, evidently, because we have this idea of a discernment, which means that discernment is not just about heads. And everybody knows that very well because we feel it. It's about feelings, it's about consolation, it's about desolation. There are things which makes us happy and others in that process which won't make us happy, and we have to go over and stick and look from that. So it's about that. It's about articulating visions and practical decision. It's about looking at the future with not forgetting the past. It's about constructing together something which where everybody has a voice in his own future, and where we deeply trust the voice of everybody to invent their own future. I think if we look backward in social history, nobody would have predicted where we were, but many of the people, from the migrants, from the people who were working on farms, they have invented their own way of life in the circumstances which were presented. How can we accompany those changes so that people have also a way of addressing building their own family, building their own enterprises and so on in their future? So that, I think, where the discernment is, with putting some criteria which should not become ideological, like common good, solidarity, dignity. I think there are strong values in that, but the importance is also in working and talking together to build that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And maybe just to show one of the early products of this this project that we have, the Aggiornamenti Sociali in Milano Jesuit Center produced a book now called Il lavoro è dignità. Labor is dignity, not labor and dignity, it's labor is dignity. The Italian version is out. It was published by the Vatican Publishing House, and I know that translations are in course as well. So I think this will be a very good resource to us as we continue our discernment then in this area. And so now I'd like to call on Silvia to share some of her research and findings with us as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Buenos días, un placer estar acá y agradezco mucho la oportunidad de compartir este momento de reflexión y de inspiración. So now I will continue in English. I think that the theme that was given, the future of work, is really fascinating. And it provokes a lot of controversial reactions and very emotional reactions because it has so many different outcomes. I think there's no doubt that the impact of technology, AI, automation, you name it, is and will be enormous, and it has improved our lives. But sometimes it's difficult to understand. I was and on making this preparation, I read an interesting article from Harvard Business Review where it says that human learning grows linearly. We continue to learn faster every day, but I didn't bring the graphs because I have a lot, but technological innovation grows very fast, and in year 2000 it crossed, and it grows exponentially. So we are at a point where Harvard Business calls it VUCA. We are in a vulnerable, unpredictable, and complex, ambiguous world, which brings the necessity to bring more leaders to lead these transitions. So how is it going to impact the future of work? There's another nice piece of work done by McKinsey, which is called Jobs Lost, Jobs Gain, which says that in the next 15 years, not 50 years, 15 years, up to 30% of the jobs could be replaced or will be replaced by some kind of automation. Some less, like managing, problem solving, etc., or more creative jobs will be replaced by 10%. But others, like physical repetitive jobs or collecting data, processing data, will be replaced by 60 or 80%. So they put everything in a cocktail and they say 30%, let's take 15 because things will not happen so quickly. So this is 400 million people. 400 million, I was shocked when I read the number. So it's not 15%, it's 400 million people or families that will have to change the way they work or will have to find another job in the next 15 years. A couple of years ago, after 25 years of working in the agribusiness sector, I left my job, and the first thing I did was say, I have to see what's going on, and I've been so concentrated in one sector, so I went to Singularity University to learn, what's going on, and it was fascinating. And we discussed this subject, and the conclusions were, you don't need to worry because something will happen, and new jobs will be created, and and perhaps people need to choose not to work, or they will have more time to do nothing. And the audience, we were like, wow, and what about purpose? What about the sense of belonging, of doing something together? So hopefully this is not the interpretation that we have here. And the study from McKinsey continues, and fortunately it predicts, hopefully it's right, that there will be enough new jobs for these people that are displaced, coming from new incomes or new expenditures in healthcare and innovation. So bottom line, it brings a huge new opportunity for businesses to reinvent themselves. And it has so many aspects, and it's so complex that I try to pick up, other than business as usual, I try to pick up six different topics that I think are relevant and attributes that the new leaders will need to have to work on this transition. And some of it was already said in this forum. So the first one would be that we need to have a broader understanding of our businesses, and not just our businesses. We have to look beyond in society, communities that surround us, look beyond our countries, look what's going on in the world, and try to understand, because these transitions are hard, and it's and they're new. The second point that I wanted to make is on the necessity to evaluate new strategies and the new talents and the new skills that we will need, and this also means that businesses and companies, whether it's small or big, public or it doesn't matter, or private, will need to help reskill and train people. So a lot more will be needed to dedicate in education, a lot more within the business education. Whether now I heard a lot about working to learn rather than learn to work, and this is changing, so we'll be completely back and forth. And I think this is very important. I was recently at the W20. I think you know it's a branch from the G20 that's going on in Argentina, and I participated in the women rural development chapter. But I also went to the labor workshops where you had delegates from all over the world. And one of the big needs is, for example, to introduce more women and girls, to promote the STEM or the STEM, and we will add the E from ethics, to girls, which are lagging, because otherwise they will stay out of this. The third point that I would like to make is on income inequality. Yesterday there was a nice graph from Rush, not very nice actually, which says that from the 70s the average worker's salary has remained more or less like this, and the top salaries have grown a lot, and inequality, I think it's unfortunately, if we don't do something about it and we apply ethics and the way we do businesses, will remain. Talking again about the impact on women, I don't know if you know, but there's still a 27% gap in labor difference between men and women, and in the last years nothing has happened. In Australia 3 years ago, the G20 countries made a commitment you will hear a lot about the 25-25. 25-25 means that there's a commitment to reduce this gap by 25% to the year 2025. Well, nothing has happened in the last 25 years. So this is the kind of things that also businesses within their own structures can try to impact and change. Another thing that I wanted to mention when I was reflecting on this is that the structures are changing. We don't have the same structures. We work with a lot more people outside our own companies of businesses. We relate with others, outsourcing entrepreneurs, the gig economy. And so we have different ways of relating to people, and this requires a lot of empathy as well, to relate in different ways. This might be good for certain portions. Coming again, sorry, I apologize if I emphasize a lot on women's issues, but I recently come from this forum, and I have to do it. It is the right forum. You know that 57% of temporary work is done by women. A lot of them, because I mean they still have a lot of work that they have to do at home on care for the children and for the elder. So this new economy, this new ways of working, more flexible work, which sometimes it's not easy to adapt within the companies, might be something good. So this was the fourth point that I wanted to make, and then perhaps last, get involved. This was mentioned as well yesterday. It is a responsibility to drive policies. To drive policies, something that is not nice. It costs a lot, but get involved with the local governments, with the national governments. Get involved also with NGOs, because NGOs sometimes do things that within the companies we don't need to do everything. Not every company is in the condition or in a position to build schools or to do something. So get engaged with NGOs. Yesterday, Martin gave a very good example on the poverty stoplight and how companies can partner with NGOs. I was last week was with a French NGO that helps to teach coding to teenagers in suburban areas, in less favored areas, and so these teenagers can go to work. So I mean, there are zillions of ideas that you have. So partnering and working with others is very important. So I have a list. I could continue like forever. This is not the idea. I would like to finish. A lot has been said. What I like the most, what I will rescue is the summary that perhaps Michal from Slovakia made. Hey, Michal. Get out of our comfort zone, because there are many complex, and we need to learn a lot, listen a lot, and get involved. And above everything, try to be humble, because this is not, we talk a lot about leadership, and I assume we all think that leadership is not one person. Leadership is, there are leaderships at different stages, formal, informal, but the world, if we want to do something better, we have to change it, all of us. So I think I will finish with humility. I like that word. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. And you made many important points that I hope will be picked up by the audience. But one thing that struck me was the whole issue that you ended with, and that's about policy change.
Oh, yeah.
And we've heard a lot from the different participants during these days about the good practices that they've put in place in their own businesses. But I think it really is important to ask Uniapac perhaps to get out of their comfort zone and going more to the policy influence at national and even at global levels, because your voices and your values are really very, very important to hear at global level and at national level to change the poor practices that still exist for many people in the world of labor. And so now I'd like to go to Denis, who will pick up on some similar themes to the ones that Sylvia already worked out, but also we'll talk about the whole issue of loyalty, the loyalty of businesses to their staff and the loyalty of their staff to the businesses. So Denis?
Thank you very much. Yes, I mean, clearly, I guess the panel speakers were chosen in the right way, because we're talking about the same topic. So, but I will take the point of view of a practitioner, of a business leader. So AXA, for those of you who don't know it, is a insurance company that is headquartered in France, but has businesses in 60 countries and 160,000 employees. So for us, the future of work is a topic of every day. And I'd like to cover 4 dimensions. The first one is the topic of the employability of our employees. The second topic is the well-being of the employees. The third one is about the noble purpose of the company, and the fourth one is the importance of rooting the company and its employees in broader society. So on, on the first topic of the employability, Sylvia mentioned some figures. At AXA, we looked at the future of work, and we did, I think 3 years ago, an exercise that we called strategic workforce planning. So we looked at what jobs would change over the next 5 to 10 years. It's always difficult to set the horizon, but we realized that 40 to 50% of the jobs would change. So that means that 40 to 50% of our employees would need to either be made redundant and we would hire other employees, or that we would have to train them, retrain them to do some different stuff, different jobs. It's easy to understand when you have a car accident today. You look at the windshield. There is a phone number. You call. Then the person on the service center asks you to take a picture of your car, and there is no paperwork anymore. And so all the people that are involved in the paperwork, they disappear. And a lot of people are more data scientists and actuaries and so on. So there is a job transformation that is absolutely major, and that means 40 to 50% of the employees have to be retrained. We took this up with our European Works Council because it's really more, I mean, it's a global problem, but the way employment works, it's more a European problem than a global problem, in the sense that in Asia or the US, I don't know how it is in your companies, but in our company in the US, only 30% of the new jobs are occupied by existing employees. So there is I mean, a common feature that you hire from the market and people find another position in the market. There is more job flexibility than there is in Europe. In Europe, people are in the company and they hope that they will find another job. So we started to discuss that with the unions at the European level, and then we asked the unions to discuss that at the and our managers to discuss that at the local level. We put in place a partnership with Coursera, which is a US-based global firm in doing management. I mean, doing massive open online courses, doing MOOCs. So our employees know that they have a program of courses that is available, but we also are actively explaining how the jobs are transformed. And so we believe this is a key responsibility for the managers. The second area relates to, I mean, it's connected to the first one. It's the well-being of the employees. Linked to the first topic of the job changes, there is also the fact that there is flex work now. So employees tend to work 1 or 2 days per week out of the office, working from home, and so the job space has changed. In many of our offices, there is only 0.7 or 0.8 seats per employee. So employees don't have a fixed location to work from. And this clearly reduces the opportunity to meet around the coffee machine. It requires better managers that are capable of assessing the work of their employees, not by looking over their shoulder, but by managing them with through objectives and reports. This is part of the reason why the loyalty of the employees is diminishing, because the loyalty of the company to the employees is also diminishing. With technology, smartphones, laptops, tablets, many of the employees are connected, I wouldn't say 24/7, but almost. And so we needed to redefine the rules so that the stress remains manageable. So we have created what we called rules that we call working better together, with simple things like we don't have meetings that start before 9 in the morning or that ends after 6 in the afternoon. In the evening, we don't ask our employees to respond to emails that they receive over the weekends or at night. And we have meetings that last 45 minutes and where presentations are sent in advance and not presented at the last minute so that there is a time for discussion. Clearly, those rules are very basic, but if you don't have similar such rules, basically people are always connected, always on, their attention is always distracted. And these rules also promote diversity. You mentioned diversity as a significant issue. When working hours extend late at night or start early, this puts women at a disadvantage because no matter what you say, a majority of the caretaking of the children still falls upon them. It also avoids, it also limits the risk, not avoid, but limits the risk of burnout. Burnout is a growing phenomenon in companies. There is a massive increase of psychiatric issues provoked by the current working conditions. And we need, as leaders, to be very sensitive to that and to try to measure it and to try to prevent it. I mentioned the reduced loyalty of the employees, and particularly the younger generations. Most large companies have, and many smaller ones, have embraced the topic of corporate responsibility or corporate social responsibility. This is becoming a key retention argument and a key hiring argument for companies. But I believe that corporate responsibility is not, and this was said yesterday, this is not something outside the strategy. So the strategy has to incorporate corporate responsibility completely. At AXA, we say that our noble purpose is to protect our customers because we are in the business of insurance. Insurance is about protection. And so what does protection mean? We help people live a better life. That means that we are also calling this moving from payer, because we are paying claims, to partner, which means partnering with our customers to provide prevention services and so on. But our business of insurance is also related to climate change. Why so? Because we protect houses that are struck by typhoons, by hurricanes. We have flooding that is more frequent, and so we have, as part of our strategy and corporate responsibility, we have been very vocal on climate change vis-à-vis the governments. This was very visible at the time of COP21 in Paris in 2015. We were one of the first companies that said we are exiting coal. Sorry for the countries that rely too much on coal, but we believe that we cannot continue to exploit coal, and we decided to divest from coal and to also stop insuring coal manufacturers and companies that are producing more than 30% of their energy from coal. Same thing for oil sands. So we have been, and in the same way, we are a health insurer, so we have decided to divest from tobacco. 7 million people die from tobacco each year, so it's much bigger than Zika, much bigger than all the things that people, or that AIDS or anything like that. 7 million people per year die from tobacco. So we've also been very vocal and clear on divestment from tobacco and doing prevention campaign against tobacco. The last topic I wanted to mention is rooting the company and its employees in society. There was conversations yesterday about the importance of being involved with all stakeholders. We have, and this is something that was launched 25 years ago by the founder of AXA, Claude Bébéar. We have an association within AXA called AXA Hearts in Action, where we encourage our employees to do some voluntary work outside of their job, and we are subsidizing the associations in which our employees are volunteers, and we are encouraging volunteering in a significant way in different areas: disability, education, housing, and so on. And we also have encouraged our team leaders to, instead of doing off-site meetings with doing karting or paintball. We encourage them to do what we call team building solidaire, so solidarity team building, where we visit the NGOs that the company supports. And finally, as business leaders, we need to reconcile the fact that we are generally earning a good income with our individual impact on society. And this is why I have decided to launch in France a French giving pledge, where we commit to devote 10% of our annual income or 10% of our wealth to, I would say, to associations, foundations, and solidarity work.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denis. And I was thinking about a couple of the topics that you raised from my own perspective, not as a business leader, but as the leader of a non-governmental Catholic organization. And you and Sylvia both spoke about the need to reinvent themselves, the people who will be losing jobs. But I had to face in Beirut last week a woman who has been working with us. We have to downsize because much of the work we did there was being funded by the US government to process the applications for resettlement to the United States for refugees. They've gone from, we were sending about 7,000 to 10,000 a year, and last year we sent 238 because of the blocks and security. So I had to face her. She's a single mother. She needs the job, and yet I had to tell her job is not going to be there any longer. And I don't think I could depend on her to reinvent herself. Also, no budget was put in place by the US government for us to help people reinvent themselves. So these are some of the challenges of the people in the lower ranks of the workforce. And then, and lower, by that I mean lower pay, not so much lower in dignity. And then the well-being. I was on a call while I was in Uganda last week. We had somebody from Australia. She got up at 5 in the morning. I was going on in Uganda after traveling 27 hours to get there at 10 at night. My finance director was in Geneva, and so that was a couple of hours before. It was 8 at night, long after she should have gone home. And then we had somebody in the US who had the best deal. He was at 2 in the afternoon. So again, how do you maintain that when you're trying to do a global operation?
Yeah.
Some of the questions that may come up afterwards. And now I'll call on Professor Dembinski, Paul, who will talk about, we need to kind of distinguish between the big corporations and those that are being corporations to survive as well, and then also some of the other key themes linked to this topic.
So thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and also very happy to be facing together with the team of the research group, Future of Work after Laudato Si, all the challenges that have been addressed by the previous speakers. I would like to devote these few minutes to 3 remarks. First, the remark is we look at the future of work, but do we really know what the present of work is? And I think this is an important question. If we look at the definition that the Catholic social teaching is providing in its compendium, is saying that work is every activity through which humans participate not only in the act of creation, but also in the act of redemption. Creation and redemption. So with this definition, we are far away of what economists, and I am or used to be an economist, define and look at as work. And I think we have to be clear that even from the economic perspective, the capacities that we have to measure labor market or work are extremely asymmetric. We know almost with the detail to the hour what is going on in the OECD countries. Of course, it's overestimation, but we do not know what is happening in rural areas in developing countries. And this asymmetry of knowledge is absolutely extraordinary. Extraordinary because, well, the 30–40% of work in the economic sense is taking place outside of the statistical and economic knowledge. So we run through estimates, we do a lot of things, but we don't know the reality. And I think this is very important when we speak about the future of work, to know how little we know and or how asymmetric is our knowledge about the present of work. So 3 points, I think, to maybe show what where we should know more or what we should include in our thinking about work. First, household work. Household work, if we take the definition of Christian social teaching or Catholic social teaching, it's absolutely work. It's nowhere. It's not in GDP. It's not in the labor market statistics. It's nowhere. So it has to be taken as a part of work. The second dimension, which is very important, it's all the work, especially in rural areas in developing countries, which is not, in majority market-oriented, but is oriented to self-consumption, subsistence work. And this subsistence work is 30 to 40% of world labor force. We have to think about it. And the third dimension, which I think is interesting, which was called in the 60s by Ivan Illich shadow work, the work that is the time that is devoted to get in the condition to work. And of course, when we look at our overcrowded cities, the transport time is one of the major elements of this shadow work. Not only one, but the shadow work, which is not work, but it's not the possibility of doing something else. So future of work is extreme. We have to look at the future of work. Of course, there is a lot of technological challenges, etc., etc. But if we try to have a complete picture, we see also that one of the major challenges in the work, broadly understood, is the migration, the urban migration. The people leaving their countryside in order to find a formal or informal job. Most of the time is an informal job in towns, with all the problems that this generates. So that's the first point. The second point, I think it's difficult to speak about future of work if we do not address, and it was appearing in many presentations during these 2 days, that we don't think a little bit about the future of the enterprise. And this future of the enterprise, and the first point is that, well, we use one single word to say enterprise, but we know that some of them, and Denis just told, hundreds of thousands of people employed, and the micro enterprise with 1 person or maybe half a person or a tenth of a person, etc. So what this has in common? I think de facto very little, but we use this term of enterprise because we lack some other maybe precise concepts. So on one side we have these major corporations that are, of course, well, there is a concept in the literature that I like very much, the limits of the corporation. And we know that more and more through value chains, the limits of the corporation, the big corporation that some of people call focal corporation, that are at a very strategic point and place in value chains, the limits of this corporation extend far beyond their ownership assets because of the strategic linkages that they have either on the distribution side or on the supply side. And when we speak about global value chains, which is now more and more frequent, so we have to refer to power relations that are taking place within this value chains, and that maybe most of the time, as every power relation, are not very symmetric and possibly are not very stable. So this is on one side, we have this world of very large corporation, limited world of few thousand companies worldwide. These gigantic corporations are de facto political actors because they shape the future of our societies. Few of them take overtly the political responsibility, but they're de facto, through their technology advances, through their long-term visions, they are shaping the future of our world. And I think this has to be acknowledged, that these are new players in the political game. We use the terms of lobbying, influencing, etc., 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 but I think this is about politics. So when we reflect about the future of the enterprise, we have also possibly to imagine that a new form of enterprises should emerge somewhere. in the middle of the 19th century, we had the joint stock company that is still there and very well, performing very well, etc., as a response to a given historic situation. Possibly today, with corporate social responsibility, with globalization, with this concentration of technological power and inventivity, possibly we should design or think about a new form of corporation that maybe is better responding also to this political challenge and political de facto role that many corporations are playing. On the other side of the enterprise spectrum, we have very, very small enterprises. And here we have gathered to speak about business as noble vocation or business as vocation. Looking at these micro enterprises, it's difficult to find, to answer really the question, is this enterprises have been started as a vocation or under constraint? If we look at OECD estimates that once we produced, where about 0.25% of the normal population are entrepreneurs, whatever happens. So there is really a kind of entrepreneurial spirit in any circumstances that will create something. So if we look at OECD statistics, there is about 1 enterprise for every 10 active persons. So 0.25% of, let's say, call them true entrepreneurs, and 10% of population that is de facto in entrepreneurial position. So I think that we have to be prudent when using the term of entrepreneurship and everybody is doing it by vocation. There is a lot of people, and in many countries, not only in the developing countries, that are doing this because of lack of opportunity. So we have to distinguish entrepreneurship and survivalship. And this survivalship is very, very frequent in, well, we have conducting some research in different countries. So these are the 2 points. And the third point, I will be extremely short because time is running, is about fragmentation and complexity. I think Pierre put the finger on a very important issue. The response to overwhelming complexity is fragmentation. So we fragment time, we fragment persons, we fragment space, because it's easy to handle. And this is a temptation in management, but also in our thinking, etc., etc. And so in order to face complexity, fragmentation is probably not the only and probably not the right way. We have to think in terms of integrity, integration. And Stefano Zamani, in his first keynote speech, was warning against the fragmentation of human persons in different roles, in different moralities, in different ethical behaviors, because here I'm the father, here I'm the grandfather, here I'm the boss, and somewhere else I'm a club member. And so wearing different hats. So I think for the management is extremely important. 2 audiences for which I think this fragmentation is nice temptation. One is universities and business schools. It's where specialists, we know everything about nothing, but our nothing is very important. So to connect and also to provide students with a vision of a human being that is not only the still very very fit Homo economicus, at least in some of the campuses. The other audience is management, and especially I think about middle management, because, well, the vocation is about leadership, and maybe in leadership, in the population of top management, this can be the reality. Management is squeezed between the, let's say, the 0 level and the top management. And here the temptation or maybe despair for fragmentation is very huge. So probably top management should take a lot of care to avoid this fragmentation at the mid-management level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul, for distinguishing the different types of entrepreneurs, and especially for pointing out that the vast majority are those who are in it for survival, and we need to be sensitive to that, but also try to provide the alternatives to them. But also, I was really grateful that you picked up on the fragmentation. And I think we face a huge challenge in the globe, around the world today, around the fragmentation issues, when we have whole countries closing in on themselves, usually because of a minority of people who are pushing for this, but I wonder how we in the Catholic field could find the ways to help turn that around, especially in accord with our Catholic social teaching. And even to me, the one moral voice that's left with force in the world today is Pope Francis, who's trying to do that, and yet you still see the countries closing in. So I'd like to now open up to some of you. Thank you for your patience throughout this whole thing, because there's been little time for you to say very much. But maybe we could just have a few questions or comments, very brief, and then we'll go back to our panelists and see if they might want to add some responses or some other insights. So I hope that we have a roving microphone. Well, let's see. So maybe if you're willing to come up to the lectern, but very brief comments. Anyone would like to make a comment?
Well,
Yeah, there is a question.
At the back.
Okay.
Yeah,
Could you?
at the
Okay.
back.
Oh, yes, there is a mic.
Yes, please. Sir.
Yeah, well, hello. Very briefly, thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm Michael from Slovakia. Probably some of you can know me from yesterday morning. My question could be this one. I heard something about the job that is good for the people to not to work from the morning till midnight and so on. But how you see the difference in the global world between the continents? So what I see in Europe, that we are starting to be lazy. Probably here in Slovakia we are producing the most luxury cars in the world today, and that's because our people can pick up the phone in the night. So the time to the market that in Slovakia we can prepare the production for a new car it's much faster than in Germany now. But I'm scared that in Asia they're much faster. I heard last week that work-life balance is bullshit, because if we are passionate about something, we need to get it done. So how do you see this? Probably the work-life harmony is better expression, but we are in Europe especially are pushing to work less. I'm scared that we are going the wrong direction, so
Okay.
thank you for...
Thank you. We'll take a couple of other comments and then see if we have some other points of view from the panelists. Yes.
Hello, I'm Richard Higginson. I spoke yesterday. I'd just like to pick up on this idea about different types of entrepreneur, because in the research we did with Christian entrepreneurs, we asked them, do you feel called by God to be an entrepreneur? And there were 3 different answers. There were those who definitely felt that they had. There were those who weren't comfortable with the language of call at all, but some of them used the language of gift. So they felt God had given them the skills and talents to be an entrepreneur, but they didn't necessarily feel they'd been called to be one. But then, interestingly, there was a 3rd group who said yes, but only in retrospect. So they hadn't set out to be entrepreneurs because of a calling from God, but as they looked back over the course of their lives, they could see God's direction. And so there was a sort of retrospective affirmation of their calling. And I don't know if that rings bells with other people here, whether they might agree with that testimony.
And other comments?
Here.
I think down here we have.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I just want to come back to this challenge of changing job. 40% of people, or whatever, are going to lose their job. I think it's easy to say they will have to do different job and we'll have to train them. But there might be a huge gap between their skills and the need for new jobs. Absolutely. How to address that?
Okay. one more comment, and then we turn back to our panel. Okay, so then maybe we go to our panel, and let's go in the order that you spoke. So Pierre, if you have some comments or want to bring any new points in, please share with us now. About 2 minutes each.
Okay, so that would be 1 minute, 1 minute. On the first call, gift, vocation, and so on, it's very difficult to get to an international language on this, because if you, call, vocation, it resonates in each of us in our own culture. What I find essential is to, and for a space like this, is to help build a narrative. How, what is the good sense? What is the meaning of what we are doing? And I think as Christian in our anthropology, it's essential to put words on what we are doing. If we cannot change, we cannot adapt, we cannot make decisions if we have no words. So a movement or Uniapac is a space for that. So I think each of those definitions should be transitory, because they may change, but the essential piece is a dialogue. It's a conversation about it. And of course there will be adjustment in the course of that conversation, with a sense of looking for something essential, positive, and also to the recognition that what the others are doing is also positive, not just putting the blame or but finding the constructive way. Brings me to one comment about what Paul had said about this fragmentation. I would use one of my best course in philosophy, which I didn't understand anything about, was about analogy. Which means, how do you relate to each other? Our Western civilization, for most of us, we have expanded in many, has been built on that notion of analogy. And there has always been a fight of, if I relate to you, it's because we are relating to something which is absolutely the same. No, I'm relating to you because I recognize in your way, in the path that you are taking, something similar to the path you are taking. I recognize and that brought me to what we had in that panel. There was for me a lot of resonance, because I would not agree with everything, but the search was something common, and I could identify it and recognize that. So that's also essential in the vocation piece. On the train and 40% and so on, one of the slogans I would have is there will not be an environmental transition without a social transition. Otherwise, it will block. At some point, there is something which will not happen. We have to be politically realistic. Mm-hmm. If there is no deeply rooted social transition, there will not be an environmental transition. There won't be a technological transition. It's as simple as that. Whether we like it or not. And we always see that there are political difficulties all around. Let's not be fatalistic. But then, can we switch it? In other words, can we turn it positively? Can we have an environmental justice with social justice? Can we have social justice with environmental justice? Can we turn it positively instead of turning it negatively and in resistance terms? I think it's one of our challenges.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Pierre. Sylvia?
Mm-hmm. I want to continue from your point. Last week I was in New York, and my husband asked me to go to a big store to buy some lens for his camera. It's a huge store. It has hundreds of employees. And I hate to go to that place. I said, no way, you have to queue a lot. I don't want to go. It's called B&H. It's very famous for you that take pictures. And I said, don't worry, because now they have, I had been there 6 months before. And I said, don't worry, because they have a new online pickup system. And so I went there, and I was really shocked, because it had completely changed in 6 months only. So the vendors, they had more time. There was no queue. They have a bit more time to speak to their clients, the ones that that want to ask questions and find something or get some advice. The cash lines, the cashiers were almost empty. Very few people, and they have all men and women sitting there waiting for somebody to pay. And the pickup line was full of people. Pickup line on so many people have been shifted to this new area of work, and they were learning, because I went there and they were asking, what should I do? Should I ask for the passport because the name is not the same? Where do I take it? So they were learning by changing. So I thought about this example when I came here. In some places, and it's easier to make these shifts, and in others, and to train the people and reskill them and to go through these transitions. And in others, it will be very difficult. And so I don't think we have the answer, but we have to go through these social transitions in a way that, so we each one have to put our own contribution. So that to this answer. And to Michal's question, I don't know, if I talk for my experience, I used to work also in these matricial systems. So we have 2 p.m. Geneva time every Tuesday, market call, 4 p.m. brisk call every 15 days, whatever, investment committee. So no matter where you are, so you're in Asia, you have to talk at 3 a.m. in the morning. And you adapt to, so that, and the meetings start at, I had a French boss, so the meetings start 2 p.m. so that you don't waste somebody says, but not everybody works like this. So when I started, a few years ago, started working with a foundation, with Irradia, where we were only 20 people, and I tried to implement more or less the same so that we are more efficient, and it didn't work because, I mean, I was sending mails at 3 a.m. or weekends, and not everybody works that way. So I don't think we have an answer for that, and but we have to respect others on the way they work. As well, and we don't have to stress it, because flexibility is very nice, but you have to respect people on their rights and the time. Some people feel a lot of pressure to answer, and they don't spend it with their family. So I mean, the global issues, and you have to see it also within the context of the country or the place where you're working.
Thank you, Sylvia. Denis?
Yes, I have a few comments. The first one on the gap between the skills and the new jobs, and the fact that the transition will not be easy. I mean, clearly the transition will not be easy. We don't know how the transition will go. I think our responsibility as business leaders is to try to find the best solution for our employees, and to find also new business opportunities to fill, I mean, to employ the employees that we have in different jobs. I don't believe that we can stop the transition, to echo what you said. I read a few years ago a frightening book called "What Technology Wants" by the editor of Wired. I don't know if you've read that book. It says basically that technology progresses at its own pace, and people can't stop it. I mean, it will keep going. So I think we have to take our responsibility as it is. The second, I mean, following on the opportunity part, and picking on what Sylvia was saying about the responsibilities of government and government policies, I think government policies are always coming too late. And you mentioned the gig economy at some point. I mean, we decided to have a partnership with Uber globally to ensure to provide the protection of the death, disability, and health to all the Uber workers around the world, because this was something that Uber was ready after discussion to provide, but there was no policy in each of the countries to provide that. So we provide it even in countries where there is no social compulsory safety net. And same thing, migration is a very important phenomenon. I mean, insurance penetration is very low in many of those countries. We are currently looking at partnership with the remittance companies, because the remittance companies are a good way to get in contact with the senders of money, who will then provide some protection to the beneficiaries. On the point you made on middle management also was important middle management in our companies is exposed to what I would call contradictory injunctions. Because there is the pressure from the top, and there is the lack of communication with. And I think we need, as senior executives, to be very conscious about that and do an active effort to deal with middle management. And on the work-life balance that was made by our Slovakian friends. Clearly, you have the issue of the time zones that you mentioned. But I believe that, I mean, when you are an executive in a Western company, you can decide to have certain standards in terms of working hours. And in France, we have an obligation with a number of laws that give us penal responsibilities if we don't act like that. So working hours have to respect certain standards, no matter what the country we are in, and we believe that this is part of the social progress to which we have to contribute. For example, I mean, it's a slightly different topic, but we decided to provide paternal leave of 16 days worldwide, even in countries where this didn't exist.
Thank you, Denis. And Paul?
Very briefly, I think the point about jobs and the skills, etc. The problem is not that the work is missing, because there's plenty work to be done. The jobs are not there. So how can we try to find a balance? There are many ways, some of them at the enterprise level, but also more and more the universal income or whatever, or basic income, etc. could be a way somewhere of solving this issue, but at a higher level. Of course, it implies redistributional policy, but if it's not going to be found at the business level, then possibly it will move to a higher level of the social system, and there will be through a taxation and to the redistribution channel. So work in a plain meaning of the Christian social teaching, I think, expands much beyond the formal jobs. And this work especially in the field of education, the field of care, etc., is more needed than ever. So on one side we have a problem of jobs, on the other side we have demand for care, for attention, for time, which is not satisfied in the monetary terms. So this balance, that's probably one of the questions of the future of work, at least in some part of the world. The second point about the vocation and what small businesses are saying, I think it's very important what you said about retrospective reading of the calling. I think this is extremely important. It comes up in many interviews that we have been conducting. Not necessarily in terms of calling, but I understand what I was doing. And there are some of the entrepreneurs that are entrepreneurs, but they are not aware of the fact that de facto they are in a position of being an entrepreneur. But my point was about the survivalship, and the survivalship is enterprises and micro activities in which there is no dynamics. Nothing happens because, well, for many reasons. You can see because the environment, because the person, because the connection, because the relations, etc., etc. So this survivalship activities that are quasi-enterprise, I think are very, very important to be addressed as social, first social and only secondary as an economic issue. Thank you.
I want to close by, first of all, we need to respect your right to a coffee break. So, but I want to close first by thanking our panelists and thanking all of you for enriching this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Well done.
You're from Argentina.
I'm from Argentina. Yeah.
Really compliment.